Hi, welcome to Worse Than You with Mo Fry Pasick. This is a new podcast, and I am doing so good at intros. I hope the viewers can hear in my voice that I have to look down the barrel of a camera, and that's actually really confronting, and that's sort of any energy you're sensing, it's that. We are going to be speaking with some of, just like, to me, the most incredible, funny, but emotional and complex artists that me and my team adore. And we get to talk about process, why you make your art, how you make your art. And I'm excited to be speaking to Fringe performers who are putting a specific show up and doing the run for a long time. And today, I have a card, so I get to read your everything. Today we have Demi Adejuyigbe, is a writer, comedian, filmmaker. I feel like I should have waited for the reveal of your name. But okay, yeah.
No,
we're keeping it in.
You're doing great.
We're keeping it in.
Yeah.
Thank you. I like compliments. Okay, so we have a mysterious writer, comedian, filmmaker, and musician known for his podcasts Punch Up the Jam and The Gilmore Guys, his popular September 21st videos, and as a writer-producer on NBC's The Good Place, Peacock's The Amber Ruffin Show, Netflix's Neon, and Apple TV's Strange Planet.
This could be anybody.
networks.
Who is it?
I don't know. I actually don't know yet. At the Fringe Festival, now we're getting more specific.
Yeah.
He'll be performing his show. Demi Adejuyigbe is going to do one backflip. We'll be right back with Demi Adejuyigbe. Ready, set, show!
ABC Wednesday. Tim Allen and Kat Dennings star in the new family comedy Shifting Gears.
Dad, I'm broke and I need a place to stay until I figure out what the rest of my life looks like.
So, a couple of days.
When his daughter moves back in,
The last time you walked out that door, you looked back at me and gave me a double bird.
I was 18. The double bird was how I ended all our conversations.
the wheels come off.
Can we try to talk to each other like rational adults?
Have you watched the news lately? That's not a thing anymore.
Series premiere Wednesday, 8, 7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Okay, we're back.
Hello.
Hi!
I made it. This is the first time I've done a podcast where I can see myself live, and it is very confronting.
Thank you.
So I'm like, let me just look the other way
Is
this
it-
entire time.
Completely.
Yeah, I don't want to be perceived.
So here, I'm so already off to the races.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about the process, and I think as comedians, this is the second recording of this, and I got some of the video back of the other one, and I didn't realize like how many ticks I have.
Oh, yeah, that's I hate that.
It's awful.
It's weird though, because I recently was telling someone that I think one of the most loving things someone can do is an impression of me that I feel is correct, because it'll be like, oh, seeing the things that I don't realize I do, but just the idea that it's like, oh, you pay so close attention to me that you see these things, and it's like I don't really do that in myself, but seeing a video of myself and being like, oh, you do that a lot, or you're messing with your nose a lot or whatever, it'd be like, no, that kill me. I don't want to see that.
So you find relief in someone doing an impression of that and being like, okay, I'm being perceived.
I don't know if it's relief. I think it's like love in a weird way. It's like, oh, okay, it's weirdly romantic that someone is paying that much attention to me, but it is also like, damn, I do that.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
My friend, for the first time, like did an impression of me a few years back, and I was like, oh, you're taking me in. Ah.
Yeah.
Even though you're my friend of a decade. Like,
Yeah, you're like, you gotta laugh, but you're also just like, is that right?
Yes.
Is that a good one?
Well, and also I think as comedians and performers, like what I'm realizing with podcasts, right, we don't have the veil of a character.
Yeah.
It is fully ourselves. So then when people are like, but you're on stage all the time, you're this, and you're kind of like, yeah, but that's the whole trope. Like we've seen movies, like it is stressful to be yourself then.
Yeah, you're wearing a hat, and then it's like, hey, show us what's under the hat. It's like, I don't do that. That's why I wear the hat.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Which I think is difficult because, I mean, the art and the artist, it's like a lot of us, I don't know, want to love something, like love someone's art so much. We want to consume the artist and their process and how they got there. And even if how they got there is famously like curmudgeonly or something, we're like, but be real. It's
Right.
like, no, I don't know. What's your energy like when you're not in the kiki, impressive, being funny?
Well, funny enough, part of the show is me confronting the idea that like I'm always performing in some way, which is very stressful. But I feel like when I'm not performing, I'm very much someone who is like figuring out an activity that I can do alone that still allows me to feel like active or like engaged in some way. And I think a lot of that comes back into being like, oh, well, now I'm just creating again. in a roundabout way. But I also think that I am not depressive, but just tired all the time. And so it's a lot of like, I'll lay down on the couch and like chill with my cat and be like, I guess I can put on something in the background while I'm just gonna like scroll through the internet and pet my cat with one hand or whatnot. But aside from that, I think I'm always a little bit like, I'm not someone who's like everything's okay at all time, but I am like very like trying to sort of keep an energy up or trying to be like optimistic in a way. And I think that's just because it makes me upset when other people are very cynical and negative. So I think I'm always trying to fight that.
What's
yeah.
so hard about that is I understand that, but then what you end up doing, right, is like that is exhausting.
Yeah.
To try and keep something up, even if your baseline is just positive, but it doesn't present quote unquote in the understood positive way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think, I'd be interested to hear about this show specifically and how you think it relates to the themes in your previous work. Because I think years ago at this point, I watched something you did on, and it was almost like a TED Talk.
Yeah.
And it was so wonderful, like the meta self-awareness and the awareness of irony poisoning and the awareness of comedy, but the inability to not be funny about how torturing it is to be. And I'm wondering if like you're consistently working that out through your art or working it to be for others in that way. Do you know what I'm saying? To figure yourself out.
I think I do. I think this show has similar themes to that one, but I think the big thing about that one was me just going, I don't want to be someone who makes comedy that makes other people feel like they're doing something stupid. Like I don't want to, and it's like not even just punching up or punching down. It's like I just don't want to punch in any way. I'm like, why not make something that feels like if there's a joke on someone, it's either on me or on some made up scenario, and like that's funny. But I think that's sometimes difficult and sometimes just feels a little like, is that me being afraid to hurt anyone's feelings, that me being afraid to like reveal part of myself? It's like what is the inclination there? And I think a lot of times it is just like the feeling that the messages that I get about like how to exist as a person, how to exist in so many different ways, feels like it comes from people being like, oh, it's so dumb when this, or it's so stupid when this. And I'm like, I internalize it as like, got it, don't do that. And then I'm just sort of like, well, now I've just created this weird like negative of a person instead of an actual person. And I think I'm just trying to figure out how to like not internalize every message I hear about how to be and just see what it's like to just be myself. But then it's like, oh, well, now that you're performing so much because of these messages, it's like, what is natural?
Eating itself.
Yeah, it's a snake eating itself.
That resonates with me so deeply, and my character in this play is very much like that. Like an example Sudi and I use is Kiki Palmer was worried like, hey, maybe I'm problematic, and then her therapist or someone said like, if you have the worry that you're problematic, you're not the problematic one. And then my joke was, I immediately think, okay, well then maybe I'm performing the question. You know, it's like the thought, because, and I'm curious for you in what you said, that does not having an awareness of the original intention, right, of the original impetus to make or do, does that hinder you from doing it?
When it comes to like making something, or when it comes to
any sort of expression, like even wearing this cool outfit today, like,
I mean, that's intentional. That is, everything I do is, especially.
But you're aware of what the intent origin is, right?
Yeah, it's not like, oh, you chose an outfit that you thought you'd look good in. Like, oh, that's so dumb now. It's like, okay, well, I think there's something of like, it's that feeling that like when people criticize someone for wanting attention, and it's like, well, we all want attention. That's a very human thing. It's not negative. It's just we've all decided that like, because it's something that is so conscious, it's like you don't get as much credit for that. And it's like, why? Who cares? Like, I don't know.
100%.
But I don't know where those impulses or things come from. And I feel like it doesn't, I think, ruin the effect. If anything, it's like the inclination or the desire to do something like that is a sign of what is important to you. And I think, especially when it comes to like how you interact with people, where it's like people say like, oh, if you donate to charity, but then everyone knows you donated to charity, it's like, nah, it doesn't. I'm
the
like,
altruism discussion. I hate it.
It's very silly, because I'm like, well, in the end, the people who needed the thing got it. So who gives a shit
win.
if like someone's making TikToks about it or whatnot? And I think it's like, it also just all sort of fills in into the feeds into the idea that it's like, okay, but this is us creating an idea of what is good to do in the world, and in the end, it's like what we're saying is it's good to do charity. So it's like, great. I don't care if it's performative; it's still happening.
Well, I completely agree, and in many ways, I think people are unintentionally a mechanism of oppression. In many ways, if you're criticizing the individual when the collective needs are met, and to more sensitive artists and people like yourself who are hyper aware of that, right? It's so hard because I think to push through, like you're saying, internalized messages, like to push through all those judgments in people, it's hard to be like, okay, I'll give. Oh, but I shouldn't. Oh, I'll create my play. Oh, but it's selfish to do one person. Oh, but, and it's so many thoughts to have to wade through just to get a single word on the page.
Yeah, I mean, the word on the page thing is very real because it also happens when I'm writing where I'm just like, oh, is that a cliche? And it's like,
oh, I do that too.
Who cares? Like, just finish the thing. It's like, but I can't until it's perfect. It's like, now you are just stopping yourself from making something. And then you'll see other people who don't have that. And you're just like, you've done 14 of these in the time it's taking me to do one.
Yes.
And you're getting better because you're just doing it and then being like, oh, afterwards I'll figure out that I didn't like that. And I think it's just, we have this fear of an audience in everything that we do, and it's very paralyzing, but it's also just so like made up. Like I don't know, it's like a lot of the times the audience is the people who's gonna like you anyway, so it just feels like, why are you stopping yourself from like doing something that they might not like? It's like they bought the ticket, they already are in a little bit.
They're in, but I think it's a very tender worry because it's like, it's why your art, right, is so specific and so like I think that specific warrior, that specific type of artist who is like, oh, is this derivative? Do you know? Like, I talked to a therapist in mine. I'm like, well, it is inspired by Sopranos, but people are going to think it's a device and it's an easy device.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, it's like, calm down, like chill out. But that sort of neurosis is what makes my character so interesting because she's insane, but endearing.
Right.
And I like, well, even one thing stood out to me that makes me laugh is that a lot of your videos, you'll say like, what was one of the lines? It was like, oh, we gave the Muppet too many lines, right? That's breaking the fourth wall. That's meta. That's everything. That's all that. And I think that that person who you are, right, who's questioning the audience, what they're perceiving, and then commenting on it before they can see it, is funny. It is wonderful.
I think that is something that I do a lot that feels a little like the magician thing of like, I need to predict what you're going to know so that I can then spin it on that axis. But also it is the same thing of being like, oh, I need to know what the audience is going to think so I can be like, I know that you're thinking that, so don't be worried about it.
Yes.
Which is
like,
very
it would be
much
humiliating if I thought it, and they say something they weren't thinking of at all.
Yeah. I was just like, oh, this is a fun thing. And it's like, well, now I've brought out a puppet, and if someone thinks a puppet's weird, then I actually have to pretend that the puppet's weird. And and it's like, just do the thing. I mean, I think it creates a funny, like, little spin on things, but it is all very much a reflection of me being like, I don't want this thing to go too long in one tone. I need it to like constantly be switching up so everyone understands that I understand what you are thinking.
Yes, hey, I get it. I'm, like, I'm watching this too, guys.
Yes, exactly.
I'm one of you.
Which is just like, okay, chill out. Just make the thing.
It's my favorite kind of comedy.
It is fun, yeah.
Because I can't chill out. I can't just make the thing.
We can't. There's no fun in that.
But I'm curious, so you're saying the writing to getting the word on the page, and through my process of my show, I want to comment on it. I'm like, this is so embarrassing. I discovered my process is different. But I take things very literally. Yeah. And so when someone says like, oh, I just write a bad draft, or what, I don't get what that means. So I'm so curious, like what quote unquote writing in a very literal sense is to you.
I also don't get what that means.
Right?
I'm just like, what do you mean? It's got to be good. Why are you're just going to add in all the good stuff later? But I think that is literally what some friends do. But I think for me, writing is very like, writing like a script is different from writing like a bit or something. Because I think writing a bit a lot of the times is me just sort of like talking it out to myself and then like finding something that makes me laugh and then going, okay, now how do I get to that? Or what's a funny build up to that? But it is just like, it's so much easier because I can just be like, what makes me laugh in the moment and what makes me like smile and go, okay, that's going to be funny to me. I don't want to spoil it entirely, but I have a bit that I have started doing in the show where it's like, I literally start by going like, you know that song "We Didn't Start the Fire"? Somebody should update it for current events. And then it's like, okay, the setup is you're gonna do the most cliche like "We Didn't Start the Fire" parody thing, but then it turns into something that I think is very funny to me. And the only way I got there is because it's like you literally just have to go, what's the funny turn here? What's the funny turn here? And it's like it's not about going like it needs another turn. It needs another turn. It's just like what made me laugh.
Yeah.
And then I think that's why, at least sometimes with stage bits, it's simplest to do it that way. And like, there's another bit in the show that a lot of these are like bits that I had ideas for doing with other people, and then just sort of was like, I'm just going to try and do this on the show. And a lot of the times the joke is in the amount of effort that goes into what is a small bit.
Oh, I love a giant setup.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a lot of
incredible.
like, whoa, when did you do that? Or like, why did you put all that work into this thing? It's gone now. And it's just like, because it's funny for you to think he put a lot of work into that and now it's done. Or to like do a big reveal of some sort.
Or it's worth so little.
Yeah.
And the payoff is in later going, oh my God, that man went to a Kinko's and then went to this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then, you know, like.
This man is spending hours at the Joanne Fabrics.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I am. I learned to sew for this bit.
Yes.
Let's go.
But that's why I think it's so funny, because it's like, that is a little bit selfless, because the payoff is not going to be immediate. It's going to be them going home and going, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, this guy's nuts. And you're like, thank you.
Mm-hmm. It's like, I am, correct.
Yeah.
I needed something to do.
I love, so with this specific show going to Edinburgh,
Yeah.
I'm curious, because you are pretty seasoned as a performer and a writer. What are you kind of, I don't know, going in intending to get out of getting these reps, essentially, you know?
It's funny that you say I'm seasoned as a performer, because I honestly feel like I don't perform that much, which
Really?
is part of why this is, it's part of why this is so stressful, and part of the thesis of this of like, why are you doing this 30 times if you don't perform that much? And why are you doing a backflip during it?
So you literally are going to do a backflip.
I
It's
am
not
gonna
like
do
a...
it. Which is, it's funny
Yeah.
that you asked that, because the very first time I did this show, people were like, I saw your show, you're doing a backflip. Are you really doing a backflip? And I was like, yeah, that's kind of the only thing I'm guaranteeing you that I'm gonna do, which is a little insane, because I had never done one before and was like, I'm not gonna
Oh.
try. I'm not gonna learn. I'm gonna just do it. It was the hubris of I bet I can do it, that I think to me at the time was, it's that level of like, there's an effort here that is funny, but also extremely dangerous.
Well, also vulnerable, of like, I could actually literally eat shit fall on my face.
Yeah, which is part of the show of like, okay, you're doing something that's vulnerable. Why is this the level of vulnerability you're willing to engage with, and not like something just emotional or something? It's like, I don't tell anyone anything about myself through the course of the show. It's like, but you'll do a backflip. That's what you're okay with?
Wait, explain that. I love that. I think that's beautiful, but why is that more vulnerable to you?
Well, to me, it's like, okay, a physically vulnerable thing that I could get hurt during is like, oh, the audience will have sympathy for me if it goes wrong, but it still will be like, whoa, he tried to do something crazy, versus emotionally vulnerable, where it's like, oh, now everyone knows a little bit more about me, and I don't like to share things about me. And that is something that is going to be a permanent thing of like, okay, well, now everyone knows this about me, and you can't just hide behind the facade of like this clown. So it's just, I think it is a lot scarier to be open with an audience about who I am, or like anything about myself, than it is to be like, I'm going to do a flip. Because in my head, it's like, if I hurt myself, it's like, I might like hurt my neck a little bit, but it's like, people are like, no, you could actually really get hurt. And it's like, yeah, but then, you know, you don't know anything about my dating habits or anything. So that's fine.
See, I think my show is almost the exact same opposite. It's like we are a little Venn diagram-y, where my character, and a lot of them are my experiences, but it is a play. And so she's too vulnerable. She trauma dumps. She talks about like the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
But she does it to push people away. Because it's like, well, you can't love me. Here's all this. And there is a very physical moment where I have to rely on the audience there can be nobody to show up, right? Like, it is a moment where I have to physically rely on someone being present there.
Yeah.
And I think in the same way as you, I don't know, there is something, especially as a performer, because we're doing this in a theater space, that is so intimate about kind of illuminating like, hi, you're a physical person in this space that's chosen to be here with me.
Yeah.
And that means something to me more than knowing the facts of my life. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. I think we are very much the opposite, because in my head, it's like, I don't want to trauma dump. That's going to push people away. It's like, I don't want to tell you
That's
anything
so
about you. You might leave. And it's like, okay. And if they do, then were they going to ever stay?
But I think it's so beautiful, because when you trip and fall or whatever, like, you have a room full of people who are going to carry you.
Yeah.
And who are going to go either haha or hey, you all right, bud?
I think it's I don't want the hey, you all right, bud.
You're going to get some.
I know, but it pisses me off.
Oh, why does it piss you off?
I think it feels like, I don't know who or where this idea comes from, but it's that thing of like, if you make a joke on stage where you're like, I'm so ugly, and people go, aw, that's their way of going, hey, we know, but no, you're beautiful. And it's like, if they laugh, it's like them saying, no, it's funny because you're beautiful. And it's don't give me an awe. That's you sort of giving me the pity confirmation of like, that is kind of sad. We do believe that about you. I did a show the other day where I kept getting, it's like sometimes LA crowds are a little too supportive, but also
get me started.
But sometimes it's too supportive, and sometimes it's like, are you enjoying this at all? And I can never.
No, they're
tell.
watching TV. They're quiet.
Yeah. Which I'm like, give me something, but not that.
Live with me.
Yeah. It felt like there's a bit I'm doing throughout the show that it's like clear. It's an obvious like this is a gag, and we're waiting for the gag to pay off, and people kept gasping, and I was like, no, don't. You're not children. You know that this is a comedy show. Don't give me like a. Oh my God, the big reveal. It's like, I was very like, no, don't give me a fake response. I want you to be in this as an audience and like, let me know how this is playing with you.
Well, because there's also the factor and like, I mean, groundbreaking New York versus LA, but there is a lot of audiences in LA where like the audience also wants to be a star.
Sure.
And so then their reaction is like, this is where I go, and it's not authentic. It's like, no, you wouldn't gasp if you're being normal.
You think someone from CAA is going to be like, who just did that gasp?
Yes, they do. They do. And I've been that kid. Like, I mean, there's a piece in my show where I say that as a child, I went to the Wizard of Oz when I was 6, and I dressed up as head to toe Glinda.
Oh, wow.
And it's because I wanted something bad to happen to the Glinda on stage.
And just be like,
then
I'll
look
do
down.
it like a medical professional on a plane.
Oh, 100%. I'd be like, there's a Glinda in the house. Yeah.
Incredible.
And so it's like a very human feeling.
Yeah.
But when you are a performer, that people don't really realize that you're saying, hey, I actually need you to be here with me.
Yeah.
And you are just as important here. That's hard.
Yeah, you got to play the support role, which I think is sometimes hard to do when it's just like, do you ever do that thing where you're watching a movie or a show or any sort of performance and you just go, how would I do this differently? It's like, that's not what I would do. Or like, well, I would do this bit instead, or I would like change this up a little bit.
Well, it depends on the performance.
Sure.
Usually if it's a performance I want to do, I wouldn't say what I like, because I'm like, it makes me more secure in my choices of just like, I don't know, I guess, no, actually,
Okay.
I'll be really honest.
All right.
And that's, now in my meta head, I'm
great.
like, that sounds so like I'm so selfless or whatever. Like, I'm not thinking of myself, but
No,
it's like.
it sounds like what I am doing is very narcissistic, or I'm just like, I could fix this movie. I could do Fight Club different. It's like,
Oh, but I
no.
love that. To me, that's just like creative spark of like, I would see, my thing is I wouldn't even think to do Fight Club different. I would get that spark and think of my own little world and my own whatever I would want to do. And yeah, I think that's exciting to me because you seem like a, you know what it reminds me of? There's this David Bowie video where someone was like, well, like, why are you a musician? Why? And he was like, well, no, I'm not a musician. He's like, I'm trying to work things out through art. He's like, I'm a painter, I'm this. And they were like, well, David, don't be like obstinate. You know, you're, he was like, no, I am famous for that. That is what resonated the most with people. That is what worked the most. That's great. But I am going to use any medium possible. And I see you working with dance, with backflips, with stage, with editing, with music. And I'm curious if you identify that as one big thing, or you like the writer, dancer, you know, like the intro of the individual identities.
Huh.
I know.
No, but it's something that I do think about a lot when it's like, people are like, how do you want to be introduced? And I'm just like, I guess writer. But it's like, writer to me is just the thing that feels like the most like thing that it's like, oh, that'll be respected, or that feels real, or there's credits to that. I make money with that. But I feel like the thing that I am like, oh, here's what I'm working out stuff through. It is like my writing a lot of times, but it's like the films that I want to make or the stories that I want to tell and all these things that it's like I put so much work into them, but they don't come out because they are so personal to me. And then it's like everything else feels a little
like you. There's things that you don't release. You mean?
Well, no, it's like things that I haven't finished, where it's like I have stories that I'm like, this is a very personal movie about like my life, but I cannot finish it because it has to be so like correct to me, or has to feel so right. Then it's like other things where it's like bits that I'm like, this is my taste in comedy, but there's not really any connection to me as a person. Or it's like dance, where it is a little like, as a performer dancing, it's like, this is just fun because it's very physical and I feel like good in my body while doing it. But then it's like when I'm just out dancing like with friends or at like this like club I go to, it's like this feels a little more personal because I'm not being watched, or I'm not like doing it as a performance. But it is like, the more that a thing is not being seen, the more that I feel like it's actually more who I really am, which makes it hard to be like, what performance thing is actually you. But I would say the closest I get is just like, I don't know. I think it's there are podcasting. That's probably the podcast that I've done where I at least get to talk from the perspective of who I am is probably the closest to like, that's me. And I think that is also the problem with podcasting, is that people go, great, I'm getting a direct view of who you are and I'm listening to 400 hours of you, so I know you now. And then I'm like, well, now let's hold on.
You're like, yeah, well, it's like this sort of what is it called, paradox, where you're like, I want to be known, I'm going to be authentic. Yeah. And then when someone thinks they know you, it's like, hey, back it up.
Don't do that.
Yeah. It's like, well, I'm actually like multifaceted in many ways, and you only see, but also I'm curious if when you say the things are so personal, you want to keep them close, right? Mm-hmm. Is that a protection of self? Or I think there are some measures, like to the Kubrickian sort of obsessive detail, and don't be like harmful to other people like Kubrick, but like there is that obsessive detail because you know so thoroughly and truly what you want to create in this world, but it's abstract, so it is hard to tell people. Yeah,
I think it's a little of both. I don't think I'm that like particular.
You don't think you're Kubrick?
No, I don't think
I'm. Babe, you could be Kubrick.
I guess I could be Kubrick if you'll let me have $100 million to make something.
To make another city in another city.
Yeah, like, I don't want to fly anywhere, so let's build New York in my backyard.
Actually sick.
I actually think that I love collaborating, and I'm not super specific when it comes to things that it's like, oh, this has to be this and it has to be this. It's like sometimes I get ideas of like, I think this will look great when it's this, but I love getting notes on things and being like, oh, I actually do think that might work better. But I also think it's definitely more of a protection thing of like, I think that I'm someone who is secretly not fragile, but just very sensitive. And it's like, I'm not shy about that. It's like, if someone's mean to me, I'll just be like, that hurt my feelings, which is funny because it's always like someone being like, oh, I'm going to be mean to this guy because fuck him. And I'm like, hey, that hurt my feelings. And they're like, I'm sorry,
immediately they drop it.
Yeah, it's like, if you're just honest about being like, it's like, if you don't fight someone on something, they won't fight you. They'll just be like, oh, okay, I get how actually I'm the bad guy here. But I think that I'm someone who is sensitive, but also just doesn't like to hurt people or make people feel like they are hurt. And I think that's very much just like from who I grew up being. And like, I think the most important thing to me is to make people feel like included. And I don't want to do anything that sort of makes me feel like I'm not being included in a weird way or makes me feel like I am not doing that for other people. And I think a lot of my protection is like sort of being like, great, I'm going to take the center of attention because I'm being a performer, but I also want to not be the center of attention because that means that I am like pushing people away or making it be like, everyone look at me and take me in. And I'm like, well, if you're perceiving me fully, then you might go, I actually don't like this, or it's not. I think it's easier to draw people in when you're making them laugh than it is to be like, hey, sit down and learn a lot about me in a very real way. It's just like, ugh, this is so vulnerable and I don't want to be vulnerable. I just want to laugh. And it's like, great, then I'll just make you laugh.
But that is so tender in so many ways if you think about it, because you are, one, sensitive, so you're better at reading a room, right? So then you are like, hey, I'll take the hit, I'll take the space, I'll take this energy because I can transmute it into something funny. Yeah. I can change it instead of anybody else in the space who might not feel seen, who might feel whatever. And the space is a little ambiguous here, right? It could be a literal space or a someone watching you. But I think the willingness to do that is very selfless. And that's sometimes hard because in Hollywood, it's like, well, everyone wants attention. If you're on stage, you want it. It's like, no, but there are people who want to, translate their feelings and make other people feel seen. So their feelings of pain or whatever can become comedy, can
Yeah.
make other people feel seen.
Totally. And I think another aspect of it is also I don't necessarily know what my feelings are at all times. And I think some of that is also I don't necessarily know. I think there's a lot of memories that I don't have of my life and my past. And so there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, oh, I process this thing in this way. And in trying to talk about it, I'm like, is this what is going on there? Or is it this other thing? And it's like sometimes just this very immutable sort of like vague sense of this is how I feel about this, or like I don't know how I identify in this way. I don't know how I feel in this way. And it's just like I can't say anything declarative about it. So I'll just not worry about that for now.
I think that's the best way to handle it.
Yeah, I think it's comforting sometimes until it is like now you're on a stage and it's like talk about this aspect of yourself. I'm just like I don't know.
There's this video of Nick Kroll taking the Vanity Fair lie detector test.
Oh yeah.
And I've never laughed harder when he was like, okay, was I lying about that? Like he wanted them to tell him.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have been there. Like
That's exactly how it feels. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, what is that what happened? Is that
Do I
yeah.
feel good about that? Okay, they told me I feel good about it.
Yeah.
Like
And
I
then
hear you.
it all comes at the end where you're just like, just so you know this isn't scientific. It's like, oh, so oh
I
God,
know.
okay.
Like, oh, I wanted to trust
I wanted to
something.
know.
And then people are like, trust your body. You're like, babe,
That's
like
not working. I've been trying.
like you know what? I'd love to trust it, but it's like I have IBS and there's a lot of loud noises going on.
There's a lot going on. My body is just it's the wrecking ball video down there.
I only should be so lucky, you know?
But like I think it's like you want so badly to believe in something objective, but that's not there's nothing that is objective, so you just kind of like it's like, oh, if everything can be subjective, there's always the like I'm 99% sure, but that 1% really sticks out to me, and so I just feel like I'm not secure in knowing anything about myself.
To me, that's your quest, though. You are an artist of the 1% and not the one we're talking about. Do you know what I mean, though? Like, to me, that question you are not satisfied with, where a lot of people go, oh, okay, 99, that's good.
Yeah.
And you're going, no, let me do a backflip on stage. And
Exactly. It's like but the 1% I need to know.
There's so many things that I also literally want to know about, like how you technically did these things, and I find it all very interesting. And I would like to know about your show, what you had to take out or a part that you loved that just doesn't work with where it's at now.
There's a few different songs in the show, and it's like at a certain point I had written so many that I was like, this can't just be a show of all songs, so I had to take some out. And one song that I had taken out that I'm still like, I gotta do something with it, but I also have already kind of put out a song that's very similar, is the idea of, I was like, oh, I wrote this song for a movie that Netflix is gonna do. It was called Scary Witches Monster Party, and it was an animated movie about two witches who try to throw the biggest Halloween party in Monsterville. All of a lie. But then the idea being that
Well,
like
it's real somewhere.
it's
Yeah.
Netflix is gonna see this and be like, is that taken?
Yeah.
Can we do that?
It's like Bitch Hunter.
Yeah, exactly. But the idea being that like I was Ray Parker Jr., who's just trying to find another like Ghostbusters type song hit, and I wrote this song, and then it's like it starts off as like being like introducing the idea of a scary witch's monster party, and the idea like Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman are all going to this party, but then like they get to the door and they try and type the code in, the code doesn't work, so they text the witches and the witches don't reply, and just then sort of like unraveling the idea of like going to a party and all these things going wrong. And then being like, I brought wings, but the wings are getting fucking cold now.
And they're like kind of losery, like outside.
Exactly.
Like, oh.
And then being like, someone comes to open the door, but they're like, well, I can't just let you in. I don't know who you are.
That's the worst. That's the most humiliating
It's
experience
so
in the world.
it's deeply humiliating. You're just like, oh no, we know the person who lives up on, and like, I don't know that person. You're like, okay, I don't know what more to say.
But it's usually like some like bro who's high as hell. It's like, what authority? Like, where did you get this?
It's like you would. It's like if I was a beautiful woman, you would let me right in. You'd just be like,
well,
yeah, totally.
listen,
I'll walk
I
you
think
up
I
there.
throw down on some beauty, and I'll tell you,
No,
I've
you're
been stopped at a
gorgeous.
lot of doors. Thank you.
They're
I've been
I don't
told,
know what they're
do
doing.
you know Kyle? And it's like,
No, who knows Kyle? Just be like, yeah, I know
oh,
Kyle.
I lie and I'll say a detail. I'm like, yeah, Kyle's mom used to drive me to school. And then he's like, Kyle's mom died several years. Like, no.
Oh my God, it must have happened after she dropped me off at school.
literally. I make a whole world. Wait,
Yeah.
okay, keep going with the Ray Parker there. I love this.
But like, just I love doing a bit of like, I like making a song that is in the style of someone else. And I was like, how can I do that on stage without just doing it like a very obvious take? And I was like, Ray Parker Jr. is funny to me because there's one song that everyone knows. So it's like, it's Ghostbusters. And it's like, it's me going, I'm trying to get away from Ghostbusters, so I'm doing something different. And it's like, this is very similar to Ghostbusters. But then just making a song where it unravels and it's like, now the joke is like, things that happen when you try to go to a party, but you're not really successful. Where it's like they eventually realize they're at the wrong address because like the town has 20 different roads with spooky in the name.
Sure.
And then so they'd have a $96 Uber ride to another place. And then they get there and it's like the party is actually not doing well because it's like Wednesday and everyone's working and it started at 10. It's just like the witches are very sad.
I just love that all of this is going on. Like, it's strong premise, and it could be just premise, but it's like, also, don't forget, it's Ray Parker Jr.
Yeah. I keep saying, like, I ain't afraid of no witch. It's like, okay, what is this?
And also, like, he's like a little bit of a junkie for like that high of a hit song. And
Yeah. And it's fun. Like, the very first time I did it, I would have like these interstitial breakdowns where I was like, Netflix is loving it at this point. Nicole Kidman's in, and then it's like piece by piece, it's like Netflix is a little confused about the details as to why this song is so long. Nicole Kidman is still in, but just being like, as it goes on, it's like they are slowly dropping out and like just sort of going, I know what the audience should be thinking at this point, and asking all the questions of like, sorry, why are they having to type in a door code? This would never be in the movie.
So fun. Do you comment on that while it's happening?
Yeah, it's like I break it into like 4 parts, and in between I'm just sort of like, at this point I can tell Netflix is not really on board.
Does he go home and have a microwave meal at the end?
He probably should.
Yeah. Wait, so why did it have to get cut?
It was just the song that didn't play as well, and it's like I would say like there are 5 big like sections of the show, and it's like that one, it's like, oh, I could do that one, or I could do this, like 2 of these other songs that always seem to play a little bit better, and my directors were just kind of like, I think you should cut that. And it's like that one's fun because it is like, I also like, I'm terrible at performing actual instruments live, but I am like, I like having them because it is a little bit of like a shield. It's like wearing a long coat where it's like, look, I don't have to do anything because there's an instrument here.
I'm protected.
I'm protected.
Yeah.
So with that one, it was fun because it was like I would play guitar a little bit through it. And it's like, great, there's a little bit less of a like stage I have to cover. And now with other songs, it's like, all right, I got a little bit about jazz that I do, and another like a musical that's about the IKEA monkey. And it's like one of those will stay. I don't.
Wow.
Yeah. Very specific.
Do you have a jacket?
For the IKEA monkey?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Oh.
Yes, I do.
Oh, people, you got to see this.
You gotta see it. Unless it gets cut.
Did it get
sorry.
custom? Did you get it custom made?
No. So I actually, one time that I did this, the very first time that I did this show, I tried to basically rig a stuffed monkey with a little coat to slowly be lowered from the ceiling.
Incredible.
And we didn't get it, so it just dropped at some point under the ground, and I couldn't stop laughing while also having to try
as if you like killed it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had to be like, what's that little guy? While like laughing. And it was very funny. But since then there's no like prop to it. But I do, it's like I gotta figure out if I want that or the jazz bit in the show. But it's like, it's also that thing of like when you've done a show so many times that you're like, well, now I'm bored with it. And it's like, yeah, but they haven't seen it. And it's like, just do the show that you know works. But I'm like, especially in LA, I'm just like, people might have seen it, so I want to kind of switch it up. So
That's
it's a lot
the
of me
comedian's
figuring out.
disease, where I'm like, but also it's like if other comics on the show have seen that set, I'm like, no, I can't do those.
Yeah, you can't do that.
But I'm curious, if are you cutting stuff based off? Because sometimes, right, it's fun to do the stuff that does not get a laugh that you love doing.
So I just did my first of 3 shows in LA, and the very first time I did the show, I did a bit that I was like actively was bombing as I was doing it, and I was like, I have to comment on this and stop it because I was like, this is not working the way that I thought it was, and that got the biggest laugh. Yeah. And so I kind of cut it and never did it again as I did other shows. And then a friend of mine came to this last show that I did and was just like, you got to bring back the Mark Wahlberg bit. And I was like, what are you talking about?
Already I'm in.
It was bombing. It was, but like, do you remember when Mark Wahlberg...
He beat a woman? Yeah.
Well, that. But do you remember when Mark Wahlberg said that if he had been on the plane in 9/11, it wouldn't have gone down?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was me just sort of breaking that down and going like, I have the confidence for a backflip, but I don't have the confidence I wish I had, which is the confidence
Mark
to
Wahlberg's
say,
America now.
if I had been on that plane, it wouldn't have gone down like it did. There would have been a lot of blood in that first class cabin. Because I was also just like, him pointing out that he's in first class, there's so much going on here. But I was just like, because I know that it's like, he fell asleep and missed his flight. I'm like, if you miss your flight...
Oh, wait, so he was actually gonna be on the plane?
Yes, he and Seth MacFarlane both were supposed to be on that plane, and that's why it got brought up, and he was like, hey, let me tell you, if I was on that plane, it wouldn't have gone down like it did. And I'm like, what is your level of machismo that you're like, I would have known I'm gonna beat up the terrorists, and then I'm gonna land the plane, and there's gonna be a lot of blood in the first class cabin because I beat them up real good. And it's so funny to me, but I was doing this all, and the audience was like just listening intently, and I was like, maybe they don't know that he did this, but also maybe this is not working.
This bit can work. I'm like, it can work. You just need to get all this information because
I
I am
do.
processing right now. I'm
I
like,
also thought maybe I'll write the musical of Mark Wahlberg building a time machine to go back in time and stop 9/11. But then I'm like, there's no way to land that plane, pun not intended, without people being like, this is a little too much.
no, the musical should just be the morning of like, gotta get to Boston Logan International. Like,
I'm Russian. I'm Russian. I'm gonna miss my plane. And I do have to do it all in a Boston accent. That's true.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. Okay, so I'm being very good at time as well.
Yes.
I
we got
love
it.
that. So we're doing our final segment. I hope maybe you change your whole Fringe show and it is just Mark Wahlberg
There's
musical.
a huge chance that I could because I change it so constantly.
Me too. I need to stop because then I don't know my lines. So here's our final segment, and it's called "Thank You for Holding My Poems," and it's based off a very beautiful Russian poet who asked her friends during a time when her writing was illegal, essentially, and to memorize edits of her poem and to hold them. And they did it over the course of 30 years, which I find to be so beautiful. And I think as artists, as friends, as creators, we can hold each other's poems. And to me, a poem can be, right, the most incredible moment of your life, but it also can be like some rando giving you a compliment when you were on the shittiest day of your life and being like, I'm doing it all for you. So I would love for you to bring to me in this moment a moment for you that as a creator, as an artist, like has really meant something that might not normally be celebrated. I'm a first thought, best thought person.
I am okay. I am very much someone who really admires specificity in things, and when people like notice the effort that goes into something. So I will say that the first thing that came to my mind is there's a time that I made a fake song that was like, what if Childish Gambino had done a song for like the Han Solo movie, and there is a thing in the background where I have people chanting Lando letter by letter, and someone reached out and asked, how did you do that? Because usually when you record a chant, it doesn't sound very good if it's just one person's voice. And I was like, that is a very good question. Because I was like, oh my God, you noticed that. And the detail was so specific. And it's like, well, what I did is there's a chant creator in this video game, NBA 2K, and I basically just recorded the letters of that. And I was just like very much like, oh, when I get to talk about like literally the process of like After Effects or editing or something like that, I'm always just like, oh my God, you noticed. Yes, great. Because it feels like that's something that people don't care about and they shouldn't care about, but it's also just someone being like,
taken for
I
granted.
do what you do, and I think that's impressive. How did you do that? I'm like, oh my God, yes, no, I thought I was brilliant when I did that, so thank you.
Yes!
But yeah.
I love, because it's the unseen work, right? It's
Exactly.
like people being like, that looks so fun, and you almost feel like you're not appreciating me enough for the
Yeah.
800 hours I took on that edit.
You didn't realize that I'm wearing the same clothes that I am in that other shot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I had continuity that you don't even think of.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, that is such a nice appreciation.
Yeah, it was very sweet. And I was like, oh, thank you.
Isn't
Thank
and
you for
it was
being
this
seen.
person you like never spoke to again? It was like an internet person, or
It's like someone I will speak to occasionally on the internet, but it's like,
it's the
I always think of
best.
them with regards to that of like, oh, that's attention. But I think attention for me is very big of like, that is, it's the currency of love.
well, to me that's appreciation. That's
Yeah.
not even attention. It's
Exactly.
like they made you appreciate it for the things that you value.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you're told like you should, if someone says you look beautiful, you look hot, you look smart, you look this, you should appreciate it. And it's like, well, maybe those aren't my values.
Right.
Maybe I want to be appreciated for the chant.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, well, you did a great chant. I'm like, oh my God, you're in love. With
Yeah,
me.
whoa, when are we
What
getting
the
married?
hell? Yeah.
Well, oh my goodness. I think that's very sweet.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your poem.
Of course.
And I've had a wonderful time.
Thank you. I have too.
I'm
It's
so
been very
glad.
lovely.
But yeah, you can tell people where to find you or get tickets to your show.
Sure. I am at Electrolemon on Twitter and Instagram, and you can get tickets to my show, I think, on the Pleasance Beneath website, pleasance.co.uk, I want to say. Honestly, just Google Demi Adejuyigbe is going to do one backflip Fringe, and you'll find tickets. I wish I could make it a lot easier.
How's
than
the
that.
SEO on that?
Yeah. If someone from Netflix puts out a movie called that, I'm
Yeah.
screwed.
Okay, here's the thing. That episode of All Space and Time was the best episode. And of All Space and Time, well, I'd actually have to get into quantum physics. So every other one was also the best one that's ever existed. But it is the best one that has ever existed for it. Do you know Schrodinger's cat? Worse Than You with Mo Fry-Pasek is hosted by me, Mo Fry-Pasek. You can learn more about this week's guest and the Worse Than You team by checking out the show and episode copy. It's on your phone, the thing you are touching so often. Sanitize it, my God. For more on our journey to the Fringe and to buy tickets to Worse Than You, the stage play, which, excuse me, let's do that, head to worsethanYouPlay.com. And make sure to follow us on Instagram. I know you're scrolling constantly, and, well, it's the least you could do. Worse Than You with Mo Fry Pasick is produced by Disco Nap and Kinahora Productions. Oh my God, you're so pretty.